Hi, I'm Robert Simmons. I'm the author of the Book of Stones, Stones of the New Consciousness, and Moldavite Starborn Stone of Transformation. And I'm here with Leo McFee, the manager of Heaven and Earth. And today we're going to talk about Azeztulite.
So Robert, tell us about the beginning of this Azeztulite story, because it's a thing a lot of people want to know about. You know, they may know pieces of the story. So I think it's a good thing to start from the beginning.
Well, that's good. I like to tell that story. And it really changed my life when Azeztulite came into my life and into Heaven and Earth. This happened right after we had moved to Vermont. And that was 1991. We still had the business inside the house here. We were operating out of the attic. And we were... we had a lot of the high energy stones like phenakite and such like that. And I had a visitor who was staying with us who was from Arizona, and she had fallen in love with a big piece of phenakite that I had. And she couldn't afford to buy it, she thought, so she went home without it. Now during that same couple of days while I had the visitor here, Niasha, who I only knew as a friend and a customer from Heaven and Earth, we hadn't worked together yet or hadn't written anything together, called me up, and turned out she had recently moved to Vermont. We'd both lived in Massachusetts, both moved to Vermont without knowing that the other one did.
Wow, I forgot that.
Yeah, and so she said, I've been in touch with some beings. I've been doing some inner attunement, and I've gotten in touch with some angelic beings. And she said, she kind of told me the story about that. She said that they were a group soul angelic entity, and that this being, which called itself Azez, and the name meant the nameless light of the great central sun. So the beings said to her, the light we serve is called Azez, and also we're the Azez. And we serve that energy or that light, and we try to bring it to other parts of the universe where you might say enlightenment hasn't penetrated yet. And so when they did, they told her that their typical thing to do was to activate a stone that would carry the frequency or the energy or the current of the nameless light as a kind of, the way an electrical wire carries electricity, to transmit that energy from the great central sun into the material level of a planet. And the beings on the planet then, whichever planet they happen to be working on, would be able to connect with that energy more easily through the stone. So they, in this story that Niasha told me, they were telling her that they had come to Earth, and that it was because Earth was ready to make a transition to a higher level of consciousness. And so they were activating a stone to carry this frequency. And they told her that she should get it from me. And that if I didn't have it yet, I would soon. And that she should ask me about it. So when she called me up on the phone, that was the substance of the conversation.
Right.
And it's easy for me to say this now, but back in the day when she called me, I thought, man, this is pretty far out there. I don't know if I really can take myself that far out there.
Yes. Yes.
All that whole story of angelic beings and all the things that they're doing and what their intention is, and that I'm supposed to have the stone, So she told me that it was white. This is a piece of the original Azeztulite that we eventually got, which I'll explain that. But it was white, it was irregularly shaped, and it would have a higher vibration than any of the other stones that we knew. So that was the prediction. And she said, you're supposed to find it. It's not called Azeztulite on Earth, because that's their name that we're telling us to call it. So it's called something else, and I don't know what it is. They don't know what it's being called. So you're supposed to discover it, and when you do, then you can name it Azeztulite and you bring it out to the people. That's your assignment. So I'm like, okay, if it happens. But gave me a reason too, because they wanted a special pendant made for one of Niasha's friends that was, these beings had prescribed. Then and Niasha had tuned in and said, it needs to have moldavite, phenakite, tanzanite, danbarite, and azeztulite in this pendant. And, of course I had all the stones except azeztulite. So they wanted me to make that for her friend. And, the thing was find the azeztulite and then make the piece. So for 3 months, not 3 months, how long was it? Yeah, it was about 3 months. But in that period of about 2 weeks, actually, at the beginning, I was calling everybody I knew in the mineral business. And I was asking, what have you got that's white and irregular and high vibes and all that? And nobody really had anything to tell me. But this is where the person with the phenakite comes in.
Right.
She called me up right after Niasha called me up and told me this wild story. And she said that she wanted that phenakite after all. She had gone home, but she realized she really wanted that big phenakite, so could I send it to her? So I went to get it off my desk to put it in the mail to her, and it was gone. And it was big, it was this big. So, and it was really valuable. It was over $1,000. So I was a little panicky, and I thought, where's my phenakite? So we looked everywhere. We took everything off my desk and off all the tables and chairs in the attic and looked in every box and couldn't find it. Niasha, meanwhile, was calling me every couple days saying, did you find the azeztulite yet? And, no. But after about the third call, I said, could you maybe tune in, since you're good at tuning in, and help me find this missing phenakite? So she called me the next day. She said, I've talked to the Azez, and they tell me that they borrowed your phenakite and that they're using it to finish the activation of the new azeztulite stone, that the phenakite frequency is going to be incorporated into azeztulite and be part of its spectrum. And so, they said to her, when we're done, we'll give it back to him. Tell him to look for it in a box in an odd place. So, that's an interesting, if enigmatic, clue. So anyway, I was just still seeking both my phenakite and the azeztulite, and a couple more weeks down the line, or actually it's longer than that, because we moved everything from the attic to another building. We set up heaven and earth in a new place, and when we were unpacking, I looked in every box trying to see if my phenakite might have slipped into something, but it wasn't there. So anyway, after we'd been there a little while, a few weeks, I think, a package came in the mail from a stranger. And it was this old man in North Carolina. And in the package it said, there was a note, and it said, I hear that you buy phenakite, and I've got this phenakite I dug 25 years ago, and I've kept it in my garage all this time and never sold any of it, but I feel like I should sell it to you. So are you interested? So I picked up some of the stones and held up to my third eye where I tend to be sensitive, and I could feel so much energy. It was like phenakite on steroids or something. It was super strong and super high vibe. So I thought, well, maybe it's phenakite. I did a little specific gravity test to see if it matched the phenakite specific gravity, and it didn't. And it did match the specific gravity of quartz. But I never felt quartz that had the kind of energy that this stuff had. So I called Niasha. I said, I might have the stuff you're looking for, right? And she came and she felt it and she said, that's the azeztulite, you have to buy it. So that, from there, I did. I bought this guy's rock, even though it was hugely expensive for quartz, which chemically is what it was. Because he felt it was phenakite and wanted the price that phenakite commands, and I had to say yes because it was what I was sort of, assigned to get. And so that's what happened. I bought the original batch from him. We made the pendant for Niasha's friend, and we got some more information because we thought, well, we want to put azeztulite in our catalog and let people know and see who wants to get involved with it. And so Niasha gave me some channelings that she did, basically dictations from these beings about what Azeztulite is for and what it can do and what its sort of purpose and destiny and its whole story is going to be. And this was all back in 1991.
Wow.
So, this is a piece of that first Azeztulite. Now, interestingly, about the phenokite, right? The phenokite was still missing. And the week that the first Azeztulite arrived, I happened to look down in my message box under my desk to get my phone messages, because that's where they were. People put my phone messages in there every day. I reached down in the phenokite box, in the message box, and there was the big phenokite in my little tiny wooden box. It just filled up the whole thing, and I was in that box every day. So there's just no way in my mind that had been there all along. So I got the phenokite back, just like they said, and it was in a box, in an odd place, just like they said. And I even thought they added some humor, like, well, do you get the message?
Yes.
It's in your message box. So, that excited me. I mean, that sort of gave it more credence in my mind. When I started seeing this pattern unfold and feeling the energy of that stone and hearing Niasha say that's what it was.
Yes.
The rest of the story that they had said about the nameless light and the central sun and the purpose of Azeztulite to bring enlightenment into the world, that was all more plausible to me. And continued to get more plausible. A few days after this all happened, and I sent the phenokite off to my friend in Arizona, I came down the steps of the studio, and there next to the bottom step was a piece of Azeztulite about that big. And when we first got that box from him, all the pieces were just tiny. This bigger one came later. So it was bigger than anything I had gotten, and it was sitting on the step. And I told Niasha about that, and she said, later, she called me and said, the Azez say that they gave you that. That's interest on the loan of the phenokite.
They have a sense of humor.
They do have a sense of humor, So, this then started to unfold more. And the first thing I did was try to buy all of the Azeztulite that I could from the man in North Carolina. His name is Joe. And it took 5 years for him to eventually sell it all to me because he loved it.
Right.
And he didn't really want to sell it. And then as he needed money again, he would call me up and say, well, I'll sell you a little more. So that sort of fed the needs of people as the word about Azeztulite started to spread. And when we went to the Tucson Gem Show, it was just a sensation there. And I wonder, is that when you first got a hold of Azeztulite?
91, actually.
It would have been 92 by that time.
It was, I think it was 92. No, it was 93.
Okay.
93, I came to Tucson, and that's the first I had felt it, but I knew about phenokite and tanzanite and moldavite and all of these other high-frequency stones, but when I held, and I'd been way into quartz already, all different types of quartz, and when I felt this, it was like, wow, that's the highest vibration I felt next to phenokite. And I'd already been, a couple of years into feeling stones, every rock shop I could find, everything I could get my hands on to sort of feel the energies. And Azeztulite, I remember it clearly. It's just it had a distinct frequency and vibration that was very high, and to this day completely unlike any other quartz that I've ever held, even though it looks just like plain, white quartz.
Well, there were some amazing, I remember when you came that first year to our showroom in Tucson, and also there were so many other things that happened with people. That first year, towards the end of the show, there was a woman who called us up and said, do you have Azeztulite? And I said, yes, we do, but we're closed. This was the last day in the late afternoon. And she said, please, don't put it away. I've got to get there and get some. And she drove down, took her a couple hours to drive from wherever she was. And when she put a necklace of it on, she started to weep. She said, this puts me in touch with my home. And, you know, I feel like what that really meant is it put her into her heart, because I think that's what that sensation really was, you know, in the sense of being in your true inner home. But it turned her heart on. That's where the tears came from, I think. But there were so many things like that happened, where people that didn't walk in looking for Azeztulite suddenly like recognized it, or it triggered recognition in them, or it made them emotional quite often. You know, tears were frequent, flushes of the cheeks were frequent reactions. Lots of people felt this third eye opening and crown chakra opening from it, and it was kind of amazing times, you know, because I was just going along with what was trying to unfold on its own and just facilitating it. I didn't even really know whether I believed it myself. But as it kept unfolding, I came more and more deeply to think, as wild as that first story was, it's probably right. They also told her, oh, and you know, another thing that kind of got me was when I would be telling the story, just like I was here with you, about how did Azeztulite come to us, very frequently, both I and the person I was talking to would get head to toe goosebumps. And that
skin confirmation.
Skin confirmation,
a friend
right?
of mine calls it.
Yeah. And I thought of that as the beings themselves showing up, and that when the Azez showed up, then our own energy field would be affected by their presence, and that would be this head to toe goosebumps. You know, I mean, I'd had the chill up my spine sometimes, you know, from other confirmations, but this thing was head to toe, and you could just look, and you goosebumps everywhere, and not only me, but the other people standing there. So that's happened, I don't know, probably 100 times over the years, that event where people stand there and we're telling the story and everybody gets goosebumps. So it's another piece of evidence that made me take it really seriously. And Niasha got more information. I should say some of what she got, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
You know, one of the several things she said about what she was told Azeztulite is about. It's about the bringing down of spiritual light into the body. And the spiritual light is, you know, the source of it is the great central sun, meaning the spiritual center of the universe. And that sort of divine inner star that is, I think, non-local, even though, you know, they call it central. I think it kind of means that it's holographically present anywhere and everywhere. It's at a high level of energetic vibration, and the stone transmutes that energy down to where we can be in touch with it.
Right.
And that's what they told her. And they also told her that what it would do in the body was that it would dissolve the patterns of degeneration and decay that happen on the cellular level, and bring light into the cells in place of those old patterns. So that it's, you know, prime function is bringing light into the body and into the consciousness. And in doing so, they said on a cellular level, it would improve the condition of the cells by dissolving those old habits where the cells decay and die and age and all that. And, you know, I wouldn't say that Azeztulite has stopped me from aging, but I do feel pretty healthy. And I've certainly experienced inner light from it many times. And that's a common experience, you know. Hundreds of people, when they hold Azeztulite, usually will tell me they see light.
If they have their eyes closed.
If they have their eyes closed,
yeah. They'll see like an inner light.
Right.
Right.
Was that your experience?
You know, I don't see things that way. I just feel them. So it's more of a felt body frequency thing. It's almost like I measure frequencies, and still to this day, you know, the Azeztulite and phenakite are two that are among the highest frequencies that I've ever felt from any stone or crystal or mineral.
And have you? I mean, have you had that experience of people reporting light?
Not specifically, but quite a lot of profound experiences and immediate recognition and feeling of kinship, with the
kinship with
Azeztulite.
the stone, yeah.
And again, it seems to, in the people that have most dramatically felt it, in my experience of, selling stones over the years and bringing them to people, is that it does seem to have a unique place in the whole cosmology of stones. Like it's profound, and I think even people themselves are surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why the story is so interesting, because they're like, why does this feel so different than
that's
anything else I felt, or certainly any other quartz that I felt? And I feel like that's why this is such an important story to tell.
Yeah, thanks. And then, one of the things you said there when you're talking about how people feel it, it is true that there are kind of, from my observation in the crystal world, there are people who see things, there's people who feel things.
Yes.
There's even auditory people.
Exactly. They'll pick a stone up and get a message,
Right.
So I feel like, primarily people sense things in a primary way, but then again, working with stones, I've seen a lot of people's other latent abilities come forth and really surprise them too.
But that's
in the way
happened
they
to
see things.
That
or
happened to me.
feel things.
Yeah, I mean, during this period of working with Azeztulite, my own sensitivity to crystals over time became much stronger, and my ability to tune in and get information got a lot better too.
Interesting.
And I do attribute it to that, because once this came into my world, this was what I worked with the most.
Interesting.
I still love phenakite and moldavite and several others a lot, but this has been what I've spent the most time with and done the most work to bring forward, because it was kind of my assigned job.
Yes.
And so, one of the things that I should talk about the stones that are on the table.
Yes.
Because this is all Azeztulite, and this is more than 20 years now of working with this stone. And one of the things that Niasha said right at the beginning is that the Azez told her that there would be more and more Azeztulite discovered as they activated more and more stones to carry that frequency.
Right.
And that there is a kind of a momentum of the circulation of this energy in the world that was beginning back in 1991, but that is continuing and growing and getting stronger even still today.
Right.
And so they told her, look for more places. They told her, one thing they said is that we ourselves are stationed around the earth at energetic grid points where there's a better opportunity to channel in this light energy. And they also said that more Azeztulite would be discovered, and they specifically named Vermont and India, and they said there would be more found in North Carolina.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And they said there would be more and more discovered in different parts of the world, because as these stones did their work, and as people got connected to them and got activated inwardly on that cellular level by the exposure to that energy, then the people themselves, we, would channel more light into the earth.
Yes.
And that's kind of...
as a conduit.
Right, as a willing conduit.
Yes.
And the more we do it on purpose, I think the stronger that happens.
Right, consciously on purpose.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
So anyway, they told her that there would be more varieties found in different places, and sure enough, this did also happen. So just, I'll talk about a few of them. Because
what was the next stone? I mean, sort of the order of the way that they got discovered, or the way they came into your experience.
Right, I will. So the North Carolina Azeztulite was the first one, and some people still think it's the most powerful. But there's very little of it left of the original find.
Yes.
And then I guess 2 or 3 years later, the first pieces of Vermont Azeztulite came. And you might want to feel that.
Yes.
So this is a raw piece, but we also make the points and spheres and hearts and a lot of different things to make it accessible to people in different forms.
Yes. It is really uniquely, when it's white like this, this super snow white, That's even unusual.
Yeah,
You know, and what I've seen with quartz in terms of the particular tone of whiteness and the patterns
mm-hmm.
in this material.
You know, when I hold this stuff, I have trouble not putting it on my head. It's like I just kind of want to go up there.
Yep.
I feel so good. So I sense a pulsation, like about that speed,
Mm-hmm.
going right into the third eye, and then it comes out the top. So the third eye and crown are both stimulated by this. And then it sort of starts moving down, so that it's coming down. It's still pulsing like the way I'm moving my hand,
Mm-hmm.
but it pulses down a little further and a little further. And for me, I do see. I'm a very image type person.
Mm.
So in my inner experience right now, I see light.
Mm-hmm.
It's white light, and it's moving down, you know, just lower and lower. And then now it just went all the way down to my feet.
That's one thing I've noticed about Azeztulite is I would call it full-bodied, you know, the way that it travels through the body and activates my energy field, because will start here, but then it goes everywhere else. And it's almost like this is very strong as well. I feel like even the raw or the polished, it all has this super high frequency.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things I believe is going on is that, you know, our own bodies are made of liquid crystal. The intracellular matrix, the cytoplasm in every cell, and even the DNA is all liquid crystal. And I believe that what's going on with our resonance with lots of crystals, including especially Azeztulite, is the liquid crystal structure of the body is getting in resonance with the emanations coming out of the stones.
Yes.
And, you know, even on a deeper level, we are in a sense meeting the beings. It's like if you and I were to shake hands, you know, like we're touching our hands, but I'm meeting the whole being that's behind your hand, so to speak.
Right, right.
And I feel as though when I'm holding the Azeztulite, you know, I'm touching its physical form, but I'm connecting with the spiritual being that's behind that form.
Yes, yes.
So that's what excites me about doing this, because it's the Azez themselves. It's the great central sun, you know, it's all of that. And I feel like the inner light and the pulsations I experience is they're entering into me. So there's an intimacy with these stones and the beings that they represent that is, you know, it's a spiritual experience that I value so highly, which is why I've been doing this like you for 27 years or something like that. So I kind of got off on this tangent, but these Azeztulites, these white ones here like this, and like this big sphere that I think is so beautiful, these are found in Vermont.
Yes.
And these are not in any particular mine or place. They were found scattered in different places. Apparently, the stone was left behind by the glacier, you know, in the Ice Age.
Okay.
But the activation of the stone, I believe, is only recent. It's meaning within the last 20 years.
It came online.
Yeah.
You know, speaking Azeztulite.
Because the beings, the Azez told Niasha, they look for a stone that's capable of carrying the energy. And then they work to activate that stone. And then our work with the stone makes more of this light energy available on this plane, on the earth. So more stones can be activated the more we work with it.
Right.
And since 1991, you know, I bet I know there's many thousands of people who have gotten Azeztulite. And I think that number of people who work with it consciously have a lot to do with the fact that all these other varieties of Azeztulite have been found and discovered to be online, as you say, to be carrying that energy.
Right.
So, you know, I should say Azeztulite is quartz. You know, and physically speaking, all these stones on the table are different forms of quartz.
Yep.
And it's not their quartzness that makes them Azeztulite. It's the energy frequency.
Yes.
And, you know, that's one of the things that's been fortunate for me, is that I learned to identify that signature energy in my own body, in my own, just like I did a minute ago.
Yes.
And that is how I can tell when I meet an Azeztulite versus when I meet a quartz.
Yes.
The Arkansas quartz crystal here, and the this cluster, it's really beautiful, and this big citrine point, it's very nice quartz. They're both. This is from Brazil. This cathedral is from Brazil.
Yes.
They're wonderful pieces of quartz, and I love them both for their beauty and their energy. They're not Azeztulite energetically.
Yes.
I can I hold these, and I don't get that sensation like I was talking about.
It's like a signature.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so this is the thing about Azeztulite that is different from everything else in the mineral kingdom. Everything else, if it's a phenakite, it's a phenakite. If it's an amethyst, it's an amethyst.
Yes.
These are quartzes that have been apparently activated and programmed by beings that take them to another frequency than all the other quartz.
Yes.
And I don't expect that everybody will just believe it because I say it, but I do hope that they'll try it, because I've watched it for 20 years now. The people who are sensitive to stone energies, they can all tell the difference.
Yes. Yeah, I've experienced that too, and it often takes them by surprise, especially if they're not expecting it or even looking for it.
So in the line of what else happened after the Vermont Azeztulite was found, what came next? The Vermont Azeztulite, I should say, just like the original, was brought to me by a rockhound.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
This fellow that lived down in southern Vermont came to me and he said, I think I've got Azeztulite. I've read what's in your newsletter and I can feel these things. I think they're Azeztulite. And he was right.
Wow, that's
and
great.
So, I bought everything he had gathered, and that's what then sort of fueled out more of our ability to have these available for people. So the Vermont came that way. And Niasha, like I said, had told me that there'd be some found in Vermont. So it was another confirmation. Then the next one was India. And that also was something that the beings had said. So that's this one. That's this transparent Azeztulite that has this funny name, Satyaloka.
Yes. And where does that come from?
This is another one that was brought to me. I mean, it's so weird, and cool to me how the stones were. It really seems true that heaven and earth was meant to be the vehicle for these, because the first three were brought directly to us by people who said, here, you're supposed to have these. And this was done by a woman. She came to us at the Tucson show, and she had been in an ashram in India. And it was the Satyaloka monastery.
Okay.
And Satyaloka, she told me, is Sanskrit for the place of truth. Satya, divine truth, loka, location. So she had been staying there with the monks at the monastery because she was seeking enlightenment. And she said that the monks would go out and gather these stones because they said that the stones carry the energy of enlightenment. And that they wanted someone to take the stones out into the world and spread them around because they would spread the energy of enlightenment. So that's what the woman who came to me at Tucson, her name, I can't quite recall her name, but she supplied me with this. She said, you're the ones that's supposed to do it. And I said, okay. And so then she supplied us for several years with, a box of it here, a box of it there. And it was a very high frequency form of Azeztulite. There are some differences. To me, Satyaloka, you may want to feel one of these. To me, Satyaloka is the highest frequency of all the Azeztulites, the Satyaloka clear Azeztulite.
Yes, it is. It's almost like I've seen it as literally looking through it. Not only that it's clear, but the way that light comes through it, because of it's just something about it, and especially the rainbows, the feathers in this, looking at it, it looks like how it feels. Is the best way I can put it.
Well, that's cool. In the Hindu tradition, the highest level of awakening is to the clear light.
Mm, mm.
So, you know,
And this also, to me, has always been very different than any other clear quartz. There's something about it, the way it catches the light, the quality of the rainbows, even the ones that aren't as clear. Something about how light transmits through them, even visually, feels different to me than any other quartz I've seen, which I don't even know how to explain that.
well, I mean, I get it though, because I have that same experience of it. My sense of it is that it has such a strong emanation that I think as you're looking at the physical quartz, you're also seeing the subtle body of it. So you see some of its light with actually your physical eyes because it
Yes.
almost looks luminous.
Exactly, exactly.
And that's specific to this type of Azeztulite. I don't see that particular thing in any of the others.
No.
But it also kind of goes with the fact that its frequency is way up there.
Yes.
And it's one of the ones that is, it's so high up there, it's one of the ones that can make you a little more spacey than some of them do. On the,
Yes.
You know, if you're trying to find advantages and disadvantages, you might say that about this one.
Hmm.
Takes you the highest, but you might, you know, you might need to remember to look at your shoes once in a while.
Yes, exactly.
So that's the second one that came along. And the reason it's called Satyaloka, we named it after the place where it was found, near the Satyaloka monastery.
Yes.
And eventually we found some other people that were in that part of the world who could go get us more. And that's how we managed to have a good supply. But then more came. The next one we actually found ourselves on a trip to Colorado. And that's this small stuff that it's pink Azeztulite, we call it, or rhodazes because it's kind of rose-colored. But the pink Azeztulite, the rhodazes, is, I think, the softest energetically. It's much more centered around the heart.
Yes.
It's actually physically a bit softer because this quartz, that's the activated part of this stone, is mixed with pink dolomite.
Yes, that's right.
So the pink dolomite modulates the energy coming through this, and it is nothing like the intensity of Satyaloka, and it doesn't fill you with the white light the way that the white Azeztulite does.
Yeah.
It tends to be calming, good for the emotional body, I would say. I mean, what's your sense about that?
Well, it feels like it, the dolomite literally physically dilutes the Azeztulite so that it's available in a different way. I mean, I know people who, this would be too high frequency for them, or they can't be around the white Azeztulite very much because they're that sensitive, and or just as a way to experience that energy in a different context, the pink allows it to be assimilated in a whole different way.
Yeah, I think that's right. And what you said about people that are would feel overwhelmed by this, or even this, it's true. That's easier for them to get to. Which brings me to another one. And I should say too about the pink Azeztulite, it comes from the western slope of the Rocky Mountains. So it's one of the places, again, the Azez said that it was in the mountains of North America that more would be found too.
Okay.
And they're stationed. One of their stations is in the Mount Shasta area. Haven't found any Azeztulite from there yet, but that's one of the places. If you hear all the anecdotes about beings seen on Mount Shasta, it might be them.
Interesting.
So this one is the next one we found, and this is called Sandarosa Azeztulite. Now this is, chemically speaking, it is quartz, feldspar, and biotite. Biotite is black mica, and so the black in these pieces, right, is the biotite, and the white is the quartz feldspar mixture.
Right.
Now this again, because it's a mixture, but it still carries that Azeztulite frequency. It modulates it.
Yes.
And this is this is probably the most grounded of the Azeztulites in my view.
Yes, I would say that as well, because it is, the white is visually available and, a good percentage of this. And interestingly, feldspar and quartz are the two most common minerals on the planet.
Yes.
So it's an interesting meeting of those. And then the biotite mica is like the highest frequency mica,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in terms of healing and things like that. But it does definitely still have that signature frequency.
It does, yeah. I mean, I'm getting all vibey up here just holding these. Oh, and the other thing that's in these that I forgot to mention is spessartite garnet. Tiny little drops
Oh,
of
that's
bits
right.
of spessartite garnet. And that's another grounding influence
Mm-hmm.
because garnet is a real grounded stone. It's a first chakra stone down at the root, and it helps you be in your feet as well as, you know, in your base chakra. And I found this happening. I was on a selling trip with some Azeztulite out in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Mm.
We went into a shop there, and I had some of my regular white Azeztulite, which they were buying, but one of the two owners couldn't even touch the white Azeztulite. It was like, too much, I can't do it, leave it over there. You know, I know it's powerful, I know people want it, but I can't touch it.
Yes.
That was her. So I gave her a piece of that to hold, and she was like, this is the stuff for me.
Mm.
And,
Exactly.
you know, she was so sensitive that the plain, pure white Azeztulite would make her ungrounded and just like too much energy.
Mm-hmm.
This stuff felt really good and made her feel good in her body, but she still got that frequency, that energy in her body.
Mm.
So I like it for that very much, you know, and that's like one of the ones I recommend to the highly sensitive people to work with without going, you know, beyond their comfort level.
Yes.
So
Because everyone's different in how they experience things and what they need at any given time.
yeah,
Also.
yeah. So what else have we got here to talk about? We got a bunch still.
Well, there's the Himalayan and the Satyaloka rose and yellow, and I'm not sure which order those came after.
Well, if we're going to go chronologically, we might as well. Right?
Yes.
That would be the Himalaya gold Azeztulite.
Mm.
This is another one from India. Again, where we were told right at the beginning there would be Azeztulite found.
Yes.
And this was actually brought again to me by some some people from India that were crystal dealers.
Mm.
And you know, they didn't know that it was an Azeztulite. They just wanted to show me a new stone. But it's got the pieces that are here are very unique because they've got the red and the gold color in them.
Yes.
And some of the Himalaya gold Azeztulite, most of what I got originally was all yellow, and then sort of a minority of it that actually became kind of prized was this that had red and gold in it.
Right. So this is exemplifying the two together.
That's right. So the this one I experience as strong right here in the solar plexus. You know, it's again the same high vibration that Azeztulite is,
Mm-hmm.
and this one centers its currents for me right around the solar plexus.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've written about that is that it is a powerful aid to manifesting.
Mm.
People that want to either, you know, realize their dream,
Mm-hmm.
or people that want to actually manifest prosperity. Sometimes that's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can use this particular Azeztulite to channel that light energy into creating something in the outer world.
Mm.
And what's your take on this kind? What do you feel from it, and what do you think about it?
Well, this is one, you know, since I've come to work at Heaven and Earth, I've fallen really in love with, especially the red and the gold together. I guess that's why I wound up bringing only these today. There's something about it. I mean, the gold is amazing because without the red, it's a little more solidly that solar plexus. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
It is very color coordinated with the chakras, I feel, but it's very strong, and it took me by surprise how strong it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it seems to be one that takes a few minutes to really come on,
Yeah.
you know, for me energetically. And so as I was handling it, getting ready for a show, I just became overwhelmed by it.
Uh-huh.
You know, totally overwhelmed by it. And
Well, yeah, you're
kind of-
handling like a lot of it,
Yes.
getting ready to pack up for a show.
and
Yeah.
got to see it in a different way, and also was fascinated with the fact that I've never seen any quartz, I mean, which this is, you know, in chemically speaking, I've never seen quartz that color any of those colors from anywhere else in the world. Right. And that just continued to just blow my mind.
Yeah.
And energetically, it's very powerful and very strong and very physical.
Yeah, I do feel like, and the ones that have the red as well as the gold in them, it even brings the energy down further into the body. I sense that from the solar plexus right down to the base chakra at the bottom of the spine. And I would say there that you not only get this enhanced ability to manifest things, but you also get an infusion of life force, of prana.
Yes.
And so I like that about these very much.
And with that signature Azeztulite frequency, it's there. And that's another thing that just surprised me because I hadn't been around it that much before.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's great when it catches up to you like that, and you get like, oh,
right.
This really is like that.
That's what this is about.
Yeah. Well, let me go on because
Yes.
I'll talk about this. These are one of the. At the time we got these, which was pretty much, I guess it's about 9-10 years ago now. These crystals are from North Carolina. They're from a place near where the original white Azeztulite came from. And they are citrine / smoky type crystals, quartz crystals. And they're the only crystals that are full-blown points in large size like this that I've found so far that carry the Azeztulite energy. And I think it may have something to do with North Carolina because it seems like there's something perhaps in the Earth's energy grid, or I don't know what, that makes the stones in the Earth there a little bit more available to this energy than maybe they would be in Arkansas or Brazil or somewhere like that.
Yes.
So these gold color, generally speaking, I feel they tend to operate again near the solar plexus, but they're also really strong up here. And I experience a feeling and an inner sense. Just a second. Yeah, immediately, gold white light. So this is just, again, reflects what the outer crystal actually looks like, but the ray or the light that I see kind of forming inside my skull and then it's kind of moving down is gold white in color. And the gold white ray is something that they associate with what they call the Christ light too. And actually when we talk later about another stone, about Azazel,
yes.
There's something to be said about that gold white Christ light energy.
Yes, and I will say, I lived in this relative region of North Carolina for quite a long time, and I think the main reason that I was there was the stones in the mountains. Not particularly these, I didn't know about these, but there is something to the frequency of that Appalachian area of North Carolina, and there's a lot of crystals there, and it's like a melting pot of energies, and it feels very fertile, and very unique to anywhere else I've been. And these are amazing crystals. This does have that signature vibration again, although it's a lot softer than the white.
Now I think of these, if I use the termination, if I point the point of the crystal at a chakra, they have a really nice focused beam of energy that comes through them. And one of the things I like about using these is really being able to focus it. That's why we cut crystal shapes
out of the
other, is to allow the energy beam to be focused.
Yes.
So these, there was just one collection. There was a big pocket that was discovered. When I say big, we got a couple 100 pounds of crystals. And that's it. That there was one find about 8 or 9 years ago, and that's where all of these came from. So I still have some that we're still offering through Heaven and Earth, but this is one of the ones that's sort of becoming extinct because there isn't any more coming out.
Right.
So who have we got left? We got some of my favorites left. So I'll talk about these two from India next.
Yes.
And these are also from South India, where the clear Satyaloka Azeztulite came from. So these yellow ones here, This is what we call Satyaloka yellow azeztulite.
Yes.
And it's got quite a lot in common energetically to me with the Himalaya gold. Works through the solar plexus, works physically, and I think of it as good for manifestation. But you would say about this one, for me, it's manifestation of your most exalted spiritual vision. Because the Satyaloka is really tuned to that highest frequency.
Right.
So it tends to bring you to a place of high vision, and then it helps you bring that through into the world. That's my picture of it anyway. So there's this. I mean, anything you want to say about this?
You know, these are interesting again because the colors just strike me. The particular tones, given this is quartz, it just is so unique. Still, I can't think of any, quartz by itself that I've seen that's these colors, especially this.
Right.
The rose. And they work very well together. That's what I've noticed, for doing like layouts or grids or holding one of each stone together or any combination. They're
these
very
two
synergistic.
Kinds, these two
colors
kinds work
together.
Yeah.
The yellow and the rose.
Yeah, and this is from the same mine, actually. The Satyaloka rose azeztulite is from the same location as the yellow. They find them side by side.
And they vary.
And they vary in color, and there are even some that are a blend of yellow and peach color. I try to use them distinctly if I can.
Yes.
But I do get that the particular place in my body where these resonate the most is the heart. And this one and the rhodazes, or the pink azeztulite, are the two that I get the most heart connection from, or I did get the most heart connection from. I still do, but since I found these, the next one we're going to talk about also goes to the heart. But these are very, to me, it's a love vibration. And it brings, love and light, love and spiritual light into a kind of harmonious congruence with each other in my own inner vision and in my body.
Right. One thing I noticed, like this compared to the pink azeztulite from Colorado, it's interesting. I do feel like, this feels very akin to where its cousins came from, the Satyaloka frequency-wise, somehow, meaning I feel like they do bring some of where they came from in the world, even though, yes, this and this are similar. They do pick up, I think, the vibrations of where they come from and bring that with it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you brought that into it. And in fact, that takes me to the next kind of, I wouldn't say we're saving the best for last, but we're kind of saving my current sweetheart for last here.
Yes.
This is all these pieces here, this cluster of crystals, and this one here, and also this one that contains amethyst. It's a chunk, and these two sort of beach stone looking pieces of quartz. These are all the variety that I call saurolite azeztulite, and they're from New Zealand.
Right.
And I know you know that.
Yes.
But to me, these are the ones that actually, several of these stimulate my heart. These stole my heart. And it's when Kathy and I went to New Zealand, you know about this.
Right.
There was quite a story there about how these got found.
Yes.
Shall I tell it?
Sure.
I'm glad you didn't say no.
I was just thinking, does it need to be its own video?
Yeah, right? Well,
but
we'll see,
let's do it.
When we were in New Zealand, I had this feeling. We were just there on vacation. I was on my way to teach some workshops in Australia. And on this vacation, I was thinking about azeztulite, thinking, I wonder if there's any azeztulite in New Zealand. I wonder if I could find some. But it wasn't like where to go. I didn't really know. And we had other things to do. We were exploring the country. So there was a day that Kathy and I were driving up a peninsula, and as we were driving through a little town, she said, "Look, a mineral museum over there, pull over." So, because that's what we do when we see mineral museums, or rock
Yes.
shops.
Yes.
So I pulled over and we went into the museum, and it was this really old place. It had once been part of the gold mining industry in the 1800s, and it was a building they used to like smash rocks in to get the gold out. But now it was a museum, and they had all these very old specimens, mostly from New Zealand, all around the room. And the curator was quite an old guy, in his late 70s, I'd say. And we were the only ones in there with him. And he just literally like put his arm around us and took us around the whole museum and showed us every exhibit and talked our ears off about every rock.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
he was very much involved and loved his work. And so we drank it all in. And at the end of the tour, there was a little gift counter, smaller than what we've got here even. And in the gift counter were rocks you could buy. And so I was looking around in there, and I saw some white pieces, little crystals. I mean, they were tiny. They were like, the end of my thumb. They were that size. And I asked to see them, and I put one up here, and there comes the Azeztulite currents. And I went, this is it. I found the New Zealand Azeztulite. And I'm like getting them all, putting them. He had only about 10 pieces, and they were all very small. But I'm buying them all, and I'm getting excited, and I'm saying, can you get me any more? I want some more. And he said, well, I'll give you the phone number of the guy who brought him in. So I got his phone number. First thing I noticed when we got back, we were 100 miles away from where we were staying. So we drove back to where we were staying that night. First thing I noticed was the guy whose phone number I'd been given lived in that town where we were staying.
Wow.
100 miles away from the museum.
Yep.
So just nice synchronicity. We happened to be placed right where we needed to be to get in touch with him. And so they gave us I gave him a call, I should say. And I called him up, he answered the phone, and he said, first thing he said to me was, do you and your wife have a place to stay? You could stay at our house. And that floored me, because who does that to a perfect stranger that calls on the phone, even if you do want to buy rocks?
Yes, yes.
But we didn't go to stay there, but we went the next night. And while we were talking, getting to know him and his wife, Kevin and Olga, and they had been rock hounds for 50 years in New Zealand, digging up crystals like this. And that turns out they have the biggest collection of these of anybody in New Zealand. So we were led right to the right place so readily. All we had to do was just find the crystal, ask for help. They sent me right to the person who had more of it than anyone else. And as we sat talking, he kept kind of looking at me, like kind of looking me over, and he finally said, I think I know you. And I said, that's not possible. I'm from the other side of the world. I've never been to New Zealand. And he said, no, I think I do. And he went over to his bookshelf, and he came back with a little box. It didn't have a crystal. It had just a little cardboard box, and it had 4 or 5 stones in it. And when I looked at them, they turned out to be 5 stones that he had bought from me at the Tucson Gem Show 5 years before.
Wow.
So he'd been there at the Tucson show. We'd met. He even had my book. He showed me after that. He had my book of Stones. So,
Wow.
when that synchronicity sort of washed over me, I thought, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be. And we got along really well, the 4 of us. And we ended up doing a trade rather than, they such nice people, they didn't even want to sell me anything. They just wanted to trade for other rocks. So we traded for things, and that's how I ended up getting a collection of this stone that is New Zealand quartz, but energetically it's New Zealand Azeztulite. And the reason it's called saurolite, I was asking the stone what should it be named. And it said saurolite, or I heard in my mind's ear, I heard saurolite. And I know that Sora is the Sanskrit word for the great central sun. So I felt as though this particular Azeztulite brings that light in probably more sweetly than any other kind. I can't say it brings in more light, but the delicacy of the crystals is a little bit of image of the sweetness of their energy, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you look at these, and I've got a big collection, as you know,
Right.
and we sell a lot of them. They're very delicate crystals, and none of them are very big. And it's kind of, some of them are even honeycombs.
Mm.
You know, it's like a little honeycomb of crystal with holes going all the way through it, and tiny
Yes.
little sprays here and little points there, and that is the sort of beauty of side of them that reflects this, what I call energetic sweetness.
Mm-hmm.
But I know you've played with these. You know, what do you think?
Well, yeah, this, I'm trying to think, when I first experienced these, I was just completely blown away. When I first held it, it was like, okay, come full circle, you know, for me, from the frequency of the white azeztulite in the beginning and how I experienced that. This is like, somehow it seems to encompass all of the other frequencies in one stone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all of the other
wow.
azeztulite frequencies
Wow.
in one stone, and it's almost like, at least at this stage, you know, the peak of the continuum
Yes.
of the natural azeztulites. And I also, how I would describe it is it's super high frequency. I mean, it's like, but it's delicate and it's refined.
Yes.
You know, that's the thing that's amazing, because I've never experienced those two things existing in the same space, much less the same stone. I mean, either it's just balls out, you know, like phenakite or azeztulite in terms of super high frequency, where this seems to be a frequency that emanates evenly.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that still blows me away. So, I mean, this is one of my favorite stones.
Well, the sarlite makes me kind of tingle all over too.
Mm-hmm. And cellular activation, you know, I think is something that I felt like pretty immediately. I mean, even now I put it down and I'm still feeling it.
Mm-hmm. I get from this, I get something that I call joy in the body.
Mm.
You know, which I think is maybe something that cellular activation is what you're talking about.
Right.
And one of the things that we learned when we were in New Zealand was that there's a lot of this quartz inside the mountains of New Zealand, especially where we had been. And it actually, you know, sometimes in some places you can find this on the beach.
Right.
And you know, my rockhound friends Kevin and Olga helped me find a place where we could go and seek among all the stones and gather some of this, so that we would have, you know, this kind of piece of the sarlite. And I doubt the cameras can pick it up, but there's tiny little crystals in the holes
geode
here.
sections, you know, in some of these that are amazing. Yeah. They're like little caves.
And this isn't even the best specimen to show that, but it is there, you know, and many of them have these little pockets of crystal. And if you broke them open, you'd probably find more, because they are kind of a honeycomb formation,
right?
Even though these are pretty solid. But it's the same, what I call body joy or sweetness in these that I experience in the crystal sprays too. And you know, as you know, what happened in New Zealand was so profound for me that Kathy and I are going to live there part of the year.
Yes.
You know, we've decided to move and be there, you know, at least half the year, because this particular azeztulite from New Zealand seems like the most recently activated to me, and the most evolved form.
Yes.
And the most, it's kind of like where the leading edge of what's going on with azeztulite is.
Yes.
So I feel that connected to this stone, and probably anybody that's heard me talk about this knows that, that all the forms of azeztulite are kind of like my stone family in a way. And I feel a responsibility towards getting them out into the world, and also a kinship with them that is, you know, means a great deal to me. So to go be where the most evolved form of azeztulite is something I can't resist. You know,
yes.
I should say too that you know, there is another type of New Zealand azeztulite and it's basically found in some of the same places that the crystals, the white crystals, are found, but this carries amethyst in it, and it still carries the azeztulite frequency, as you know.
Yes.
But it's the amethyst, just like when you've got dolomite mixed in, or when you've got another mineral mixed in, the amethyst modulates the energy in an interesting way.
Yes, yes.
And I know you like these.
Oh, I do. Yeah. Because, again, it takes that super refined high frequency and adds a different thing to it. It's almost like the strength of amethyst, which I feel is a pretty strong stone. I mean, people can take it for granted, but it's a pretty strong energy.
Yeah.
As we can see right there.
And I think it's very purifying.
It is.
Amethyst in general is purifying, and Niasha's key words for amethyst are divine connection. So I think that's a good way of summing up its qualities too.
Yeah, exactly. And it just rounds it out in a really interesting way. And we need not forget about Amazez.
Right. Oh, that's
when
right.
We're done with this New Zealand Azeztulite segment.
So that is a good segue. I love the New Zealand Azeztulite with the amethyst in it, and just like I love all the rest of that stuff. And I do think that its quality of purification, energetic purification of your field, is something that it probably does better than any of the others do, because it's got the amethyst as an ally in terms of what it's doing internally.
Yes, absolutely, and in that way it's unique to what we've looked at so far.
And I forgot, there is one more Azeztulite, and this one is a recent one too. This is actually the most recent one. I still will say that I'll move to New Zealand to be near this stuff. I won't move to Africa to be near this stuff, but I do like it very much.
Yes.
This comes from an island off the coast of Africa, and we call this one Amazez because it's amethyst azeztulite. Unlike the New Zealand Azeztulite, where only a few of the pieces contain amethyst, these all are a mixture of amethyst and white or clear, or white and clear quartz.
Right.
And every piece has got amethyst in it. So, then, like I said, these do come from just off the continent of Africa. And again, I feel that purification quality with these.
Yes. And this does feel really, now that I'm holding it in the context of after hearing all the stories of the other Azeztulites, I can feel that this is really a good stone for the times.
Yeah.
For the general purposes, as a way to interact with Azeztulite, with the amethyst, that's probably, along with rose quartz, the most universal stone, that people can relate to. So it's like a bridge, energetically and physically.
Yeah, a bridge, that's a great way of putting it. I sense it as being quite powerful, for one thing. I remember that Anne at the office, when she first felt this, she said it hit her like a freight train. So it's a really strong pulsation that you get from this one of the Azeztulite energy. And my feeling about it is, when you say it's a stone for the times, the times are challenging. There's a lot of, there's a lot of stress in people's lives and in the events of the world. And we're probably going to go through quite a bit more stress as we attempt to evolve to a higher way of being. And I get that these things are a kind of a strong ally to have with you in order to get through difficulty, stressful situations, and the difficulties that we carry within ourselves too.
Right.
Our own personal dysfunctionality can be kind of rooted out by working with these.
Yeah.
So that's powerful stuff, and I said the name right, Amazez.
Amazez, yes.
So that's another one that, I guess anybody that's listening would know that I believe all of these are highly good for everybody.
Yes.
And you know, it's been a more than 20-year journey now for me, and almost a 20-year journey for you.
Yes. Yes.
With
That's
working
right.
with Azeztulite, and I know my enthusiasm is not any less.
Yeah, and I'm just getting to know some of the more recent ones more, fully
Mm-hmm.
lately. And even this story, it's so great to hear this story because it's just so interesting
Well, I agree.
from a
I
lot of
mean,
different
it interests me
perspectives.
anyway.
Yeah, and I heard stuff that I've seen written, that I'm getting in a different way hearing you say it.
Oh, that's good. Well, I would say that, one of the things, sort of a summing up thing I might say is, just for clarity, all Azeztulite is quartz in the physical
Mm-hmm.
level, but not all quartz is Azeztulite. So, in regard to Azeztulite being for the earth, this is kind of one of the most important things. I kind of saved it till the end
Mm-hmm.
to say about it, which is that this is one of the very first, not one of the first things, it's one of the most recent things that Niasha received in information from the Azez that she's told me about.
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote me about this, and she said that the ultimate intention of the beings and the beings that are manifesting their energy through these stones is for all of the quartz on earth to carry the frequency of the nameless light
Mm.
eventually.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the odd questions is, well, why does this piece of quartz carry that energy and this one doesn't?
Right.
I don't know the answer as to why, but I do believe the statement that the intention is that when this work is done, all of the quartz in the Earth's crust will vibrate the way that these stones vibrate now,
Right.
and maybe even more intensely. There's some new things happening that make me feel like it will happen even more intensely than what we experience here with these.
Right.
But the work of meditating with the Azeztulite, using it in healing, passing it around to other people, planting it in the earth,
Yes.
leaving it in power places, asking for the energy of the great central sun to come through the stones and to come through yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is for the ultimate purpose of channeling through enough of that spiritual light for the earth herself to be enlightened.
Mm-hmm.
And what that will be like is that what will be happening at the same in the same process as that is that all of the quartz in the Earth's crust will start becoming Azeztulite.
Right.
And Niasha said that, and it just resonated through me, and it has ever since. I got the head to toe goosebumps just then as I was saying it.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the planet becomes a planet of light. 25% of the Earth's crust is quartz,
Yes.
and most of the other 75% is feldspar, which is another silicate.
Exactly.
So basically, if this does unfold, and all of the Earth's crust, or even 25% of the Earth's total crust,
Reaches this frequency or whatever version of this frequency.
that's a whole different kind of planet.
Mm-hmm.
That's a planet of light. And at that point, it wouldn't be just sensitive people like me and you and lots of the others that know my work,
Mm-hmm.
that feel the energy of Azeztulite. There wouldn't be anybody walking on the earth that couldn't feel it when 25% of the crust is vibrating like this.
Yes.
And it's spiritual light. It's love. It's a feeling of divine connection. It opens the heart. It transforms the body.
Mm-hmm.
It transforms consciousness. All of this is with our allowing cooperation, because no love will force itself.
Mm.
Love will only offer itself. But if we say yes, and then if we intend and do some actions that further that intention,
Mm-hmm.
I really think that that whole story can happen. And I would believe so less if I hadn't been watching for 20 years as every piece of this story has unfolded the way that I was told it would.
Mm.
And I didn't make it up in my own mind because I wasn't even the one who was told. I've certainly had many experiences that validate it.
Mm.
So anyone who is working with this stone, I encourage them to plant it, to give it away as a gift, to do the intention, to ask the light to come down, to actively work to invite the spiritual light into themselves and into the world. Because I feel like the beings on the higher planes are just waiting for us to give the invitation, and they'll say yes. And that's already happening. It's been happening for 20 years.
Right.
But I feel like it's speeding up. I feel like because we now have so many varieties, you can see that as evidence that there's momentum to this activation. The New Zealand Azeztulite is so new and newly activated and more refined and more highly evolved, and a kind of a resonance with the humanness in us that I feel best from this of anything.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
So my enthusiasm is undented, and it gets stronger every time I start talking about it. So I think that the next thing that we'll do a video about is the new level of activation for some Azeztulite,
which is the Azazeo.
The Azazeo.
Yes.
And that's
another story.
That's another story.
To find out more about Azeztulite, go to heavenandearthjewelry.com.